Hello everyone, it's Mike Levin. Friday morning, 2017 at around 8:30 a.m. and I'm heading into work, and I thought I'd answer a few questions that I've been receiving lately. I seem to be hitting on a topic of significant interest as people in my industry are sort of standing around figuring out what the gradually rolling out changes of machine learning techniques into Google's search algorithm is going to mean for us over the next, in the immediate term, year or two, but of course in the longer term, the next 10 years or so. And so evolutions like this in technology are difficult to predict because, of the fish in water effect. You don't know the water is there because you're living in it. It's all around you. And the field of predicting the future is becoming a hotter and hotter topic. And, all of this really fits in. And it's currently at the point where it's a little bit like reading tea leaves, but it's got to get better than that. We've got to make meaningful and accurate predictions on a daily basis, figuring out where things are headed so you can put yourself out in front of that. And so that itself, even that mindset, is a little bit, SEO manipulative. You've got to not think necessarily about making the traffic grab every time, but honestly, we do work for people. We do need to make a living. So even though the genuine things that are intended to be rewarded in search are the genuine articles, the best content on the subject matter, we're still in a horse race trying to get our content and our subject matter to position highest in Google search results. And the way this was done in the past was, fairly straightforward. There was always a little bit of, impossible to figure out black box aspect to it as Google tweaks and changes how things work. But for the most part, if you made a non-moving target, that is a URL that doesn't change over the years and it starts to accumulate up a lot of signals, primarily links to the page, then it is more likely to come up high in search results when people search on terms that are used primarily in the title tag, but also elsewhere on the page. And, you might think of that as, a mechanical and deterministic approach. Now, I'm not saying it's going non-mechanical and non-deterministic, but I am saying that the new techniques, and this is, I guess, what people are mostly interested in, is the machine learning methodology, whereby items, in this case URLs, are sorted into different tags or buckets. The Google Quality Rater team is setting a quality number on a scale for all the content that they manually pull up and look at. And if you think about it, as stuff gets sorted into, say, one of three buckets, highly relevant to the term I searched on, somewhat relevant to the term I searched on, and not relevant at all, these groups, these sample groups, and this is directed training of machine learning, get larger and larger. And then Google simply, or whatever machine learning system is at play, simply looks at the new input coming in, the next URL submitted, and based on pattern matching and similarity, it decides which of these three buckets that new URL belongs in without a human being actually sorting it. And the longer this process goes on and the more data that goes in, the smarter the system gets. Now, the interesting issue here is that machines are making inferences. It's not precisely human intuition yet, but some would make that argument. Some would make the argument that Google's is it deep learning? I forget exactly the name of it, but their system that beat the world champion at Go, the Chinese strategy game with the little black and white tiles, or little beads that you surround each other with and stuff. It has more board layouts possible than there are allegedly atoms in the known universe. Okay, so this is an order of magnitude of complexity beyond chess, and a computer has now in fact repeatedly beat the world champion at it, and some say that this requires something like human intuition, that you have broken out of the deterministic model and you can't exactly say anymore why the computer made this particular move. It just did, and to great effect. It's going to win the game. So there's a class of problem on this planet that has profound meaning for, profound impact. Specifically, that every problem that can be solved will be solved better by machines than by humans. Anything that is characterized by tedium, known input parameters, definable problems. Things like every game, board and strategy game, of course not sports and athletics yet, but everything that can be automated will be automated. Simple way of saying it. And that automation will be profoundly better than the typical human could do the job. So that's like 10, 20 years off, and that's the big profound stuff. So what about the next year or two? Well, it gets rolled out ever so slightly, altering the more current, or I guess the currently deployed systems, altering it ever so slightly, taking over more and more of the decision-making process. And when you're standing on it from the outside, like we SEOs, you try and black box it. You give a system some input, you see the output that comes out, you look at all the factors that went in to, you look at everything you can look at. What pages came up in the search results, what are their attributes, what are their profiles of how heavily they're linked to and by whom, and you try and make correlations. But really what you're doing is you're doing this intuitive process, which is exactly like the kind of thing that machine learning systems are good at. So it is a symmetrical process, and this is why and how I'm adjusting my field and what I'm focusing on the way I am. Step one, just understand what they're doing from their end. It will make my intuitive process and inferences that much more accurate, right? If I can do this machine learning, training group stuff, then I'll understand more what Google is doing. Watson is a popular system out there. I guess everyone knows it because of it winning in Jeopardy and all these TV commercials they're running now. And it's a trained learning system, and you just start giving it input and doing this grouping, and it starts to make these inferences. And I might start there. Watson is a commercial formalized product with, that's brought down so that mere mortals can sort of do this stuff. But there's also Google TensorFlow. And there's the fact that a lot of this stuff takes so much processing power and storage that you really want to use cloud services for it, so there's an automatic cost involved. So I work for a company. This is my job. I think I have to define a project where I do a machine learning SEO, project. And in fact, the EU just came out with this like £10 million reward for anyone who can monitor search results to catch Google doing monopolistic practices in search results, promoting their own services, demoting other people's services. So $10 million for a search monitoring system, which effectively would be generating the data that you would use in such a machine learning system, because they're interested in all the little details surrounding search, where the paid ads are, where the local and user customization and news results, the whole page layout. And once you accumulate enough of that up in terms probably of screen snapshots and maybe the saved source of the HTML and the resource graphics that it took to build a Google search result page, and enough of this, because customization, it's different from different locations by different people under different user profiles with different histories. So you have to mount up a huge mass of this screenshot search result data and keep it and keep all the metadata intact. This search was performed at this time from this IP, etc., etc. Then you start feeding it into the learning system. You start the groups being made, and the thing that made Go, the Go victory, so different from the chess victory is that the manual labor of the groups. See, that's where the real trick is. If you have you ever had someone working for you who was just really stupid, who you had to explain every little thing about the task they're supposed to do? They can't make a move without you telling them what they're supposed to do, either because of actual stupidity or lack of confidence or not wanting to look foolish. The list of reasons goes on, but that is the bottleneck now with machine learning systems. These learning groups don't happen unless a human makes them happen. Bottleneck. So in the Go system, the learning groups were automatically created. The video of the Go board created these screen snapshots or videos, whatever. The machine made all these groups that grouped them according to similarities of board layout and moves. And then a human came in and tagged what those groups signified, what this meant. These things are all similar because the player had this in mind. Rinse and repeat. So the data is flowing into a system automatically. Mechanical Turk style. All these people are doing work for you and just data ingesting. This is where things like Amazon S3 and unlimited data stores, seemingly unlimited data stores come into play. There are no virtual servers. There are no cloud hard drives. There's only servers and hard drives with systems and abstractions keeping you from dealing with the complexity of that fact. And resources are freed and reallocated. And with some services that you buy, they're fixed resources. And with other services, they're bursty on demand. Serverless is a big deal these days. There's no such thing as serverless. There's only such thing as, sysadminless or, configurationless. On-demand services where, resources are requisitioned up and then, released when you're done, and you only pay for the processing time or storage that you use. And so they can just gulp, 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 drink down the data, do the grouping. Well, those systems that pull down and store the data don't do the grouping. You've got to come in with something like Watson or TensorFlow to do the grouping. And then the labeling, and then emergent behavior. Now, that would be enough to create systems like Google, but not enough to figure out to make the same inferences as what Google did. And therein lies today's difficulty and the massive impending difficulty. Simply understanding machine learning more will put us in a much better position to do SEO, because we'll be able to make better inferences, understanding why Google is making its inferences. However, that does not do a lot for accuracy. It's still guesswork. So, there's work being done to create better transparency in machine learning so that the reasons for these inferences can be laid out in almost like a decision branching tree. I don't know what systems really do that yet, where that is yet. So when you get an answer out, it can explain itself to you. This is where Elon Musk and folks come in saying things like human language is the barrier, it's insufficient. When computers are doing this machine learning stuff, their conclusions are not thought out in English terms. There's these abstract neural net relationships and processes that are not easily put into the English language. So one of the big breakthroughs is believed to be making a computer explain itself to you in human terms, in English or whatever. We're not there yet. So what does that mean for me today, going into work now? Well, it means I better be in a good position to do the tests to create small examples of what Google is doing, so I can get a deeper understanding of myself, explain it to other people, and position myself so that I can start to make accurate, meaningful, symmetrical inferences right along with Google. Feed it some of the same input as what Google has. Now, I'll never have all the same input as what Google has, because they have a, edit by edit history of the whole internet since it's, of the web, since it started crawling. They don't throw out any of that data, so they have a stateful memory type thing. My stuff is probably going to have to be programmed a little more looking at the current state and making inferences forward from a time sample. That's a Markov chain. So if Markov chains can make, approximations of what Google can do with their complete history, I'm in good shape. My machine learning systems based on data samples that have Markov chain properties will tell me publish on this topic, do it at this time of year, keep it in a promotion cycle this long, make sure you get this many links from these types of sources, and rinse and repeat. I guess what I'm doing is I'm trying to make the next HitTail. I made HitTail in 2006. It used very rudimentary versions of this, and it's still going strong today in 2017, 11 years later. So, my theory is that I can make the same kind of, speculations today that I did back then. If this is true, then that's got to be true. So I can build a system based around that, and the, immutable truths act as a sort of anchor to my system, so that I can pivot left and right a little bit as the variables actually change, and adjust the nature and quality of the recommendations my system will be issuing. Future of SEO, next gen SEO, the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, telling you what people are interested in, where the mindset is, and how to get out in front of them in their day-to-day media consumption activity. Thanks for joining me. Hope to talk to you soon, and don't forget to subscribe.